For a writer, it's a word, all right? For a composer or a musician, it's a note, all right? For an editor and a filmmaker, it's the frames, all right? And the 1 frame off or 2 frames added or 2 frames less is the difference between a sour note and a sweet note. It's the difference between clunky, clumsy crap, all right, and orgasmic rhythm.
Before the invention of editing in film, the concept of editing existed in other entertainment forms like scene changes in live theatre and flashbacks in literature. The idea of being able to play with time in entertainment has always been a reality, but filmmakers believed cutting film would confuse their audience, and so they were limited to short, simple, and often dull films. In 1878, photographer Edward Muybridge was commissioned by Leland Stanford to prove that at a point of a gallop, a horse had all 4 feet above ground and is briefly airborne. To do this, he set up 12 cameras side by side along a track attached to wires that would trigger the shutters. As the horse galloped past, the cameras took 12 photos in rapid succession, which Muybridge developed on site. After seeing all the images, he and Stanford discovered that the theory was indeed correct, and the horse is briefly airborne. This was an early form of stop-motion animation, which helped guide the film industry in the coming decades. 17 years later, after having been invited to Thomas Edison's exhibition of his newest invention, the kinetoscope, the Lumiere brothers took inspiration to improve this unpatented machine to show and project films and animations to an audience of multiple people rather than just one. In 1896, the brothers created over 40 films showing everyday French life, or early short comedy sketches. After having seen these films a few times, the general public began to find them boring because they could see all these things in person, in colour, and with sound right outside their homes. In other words, the novelty had worn off. The film industry was now seen as obsolete, with no future, as a fad that would die off, never to be seen again. That is, until Robert W. Paul would make the revolutionary decision to make a cut in the film to show 2 different scenes, an elderly couple outside of an art gallery, and inside once they'd gone in. Unfortunately, the second part of the film has been lost, and we can only see 2 frames that have been salvaged. As one of the first of its kind, his technique inspired future filmmakers to make more complex, detailed, and longer films without fear of confusing their audience. D.W. Griffith regularly used what is known as continuity editing in his films, such as parallel editing, which gained him the nickname of the father of film. While he didn't invent these techniques, he helped make them narratively and emotionally significant in the film industry. Russian filmmaker and film theorist Lev Kuleshov was the inventor of what Hitchcock called
pure cinematics,
or what is more commonly known as the Kuleshov effect. Kuleshov theorized that feeling was conveyed in film by the audience themselves and what they saw on the screen, rather than what the actor said or did within the film. He tested this theory by having a popular actor at the time stare directly into the camera for a few seconds, expressionless. Kuleshov then followed that shot by one of 3 other shots: a bowl of soup, a girl in a coffin, or a woman lying in a divan. Depending on which clip the audience saw after the shot of the actor, their perception of the initial staring clip changed completely. A man who was involved in the experiment described how the audience raved about the acting. The heavy pensiveness of his mood over the forgotten soup, were touched and moved by the deep sorrow with which he looked on the dead child, and noted the lust with which he observed the woman. But we knew that in all 3 cases the face was exactly the same. As editing became more important in film to tell a story, the role of editor was something that filmmakers needed employees to fulfill, because the process was so long, tedious, and meticulous. Once film had been cut, it had been cut, so if any mistakes were made, it could cost the editor their job. Because of the low pay and high demand, women found themselves editing for the film industry, and because of the level of care and precision needed for the job, they found themselves excelling in comparison to their male counterparts. 2 of the most notable women were Rosie Smith and Margaret Booth, who both worked with D.W. Griffith on some of his best work, such as The Birth of a Nation and Orphans of the Storm. As editing became more important to the creation of a film, the relationship between directors and editors changed significantly, from directors not even being allowed to enter the editing room, to editors being more involved in the creative direction of a film, and directors having more input to the style of editing in a film. This meant that editing went from just being a laborious chore in filmmaking, to becoming an essential part of the creativity in making a film. More editing techniques and styles were invented and perfected, like continuity editing and montage. Montage was a favourite of Alfred Hitchcock's in making his films. He used it to create the illusion of something happening without actually having to do it. One of the most famous examples of his use of montage for effect would be the shower scene in Psycho. To create this montage, Hitchcock used 78 pieces of film in about 45 seconds, showing snippets of her head, her feet, the shower curtain, the shower itself, and so on, to create the impression that she was being stabbed to death in the shower without ever actually showing it. Before Hitchcock revolutionised the use of montage, it simply meant an assembly of clips with no real thought put into it. But with his new use of the technique, he showed aspiring filmmakers through the ages that you can make anything happen with good editing. Today, some editors are long-term collaborators with directors and become each other's first choices on new projects. Editor Sally Menk has been working with Quentin Tarantino since his 1992 film Reservoir Dogs as editor, and has been editor for all of his most successful films since.
When I was doing my first movie, the only thing I knew is I wanted a female editor, because I just felt a female editor would be more nurturing to the movie and to me. I wouldn't try to be winning their way just to win their way, all right? They wouldn't be trying to shove their agenda or win their battles with me. They would be nurturing me through this process.
Come here! He's gonna kill me, man! You fucking got that! Hey!
I think editors play a big role with directors in giving them support, making them feel like they can look at something that may have trouble or problems and be comfortable enough so that they can approach those problems.
Tarantino's Pulp Fiction is a postmodern masterpiece, with revolutionary use of non-linear editing to tell 3 stories at once, which some film analysts have come to call circular narrative. The narrative structure is completely non-chronological, and so the editing needed to be seamless. If Pulp Fiction had been shown to an earlier audience, it would have been terribly received, because of its heavy reliance on our subconscious understanding of editing after it had become common practice in filmmaking.
In the beginning, he really doesn't guide me, and then I put together what I think he wants, and pretty much we've worked together so long I can judge what he would want.
The fuck is this place?
This is Jack Rabbit Slim's. An Elvis man should love it.
Come on, man, let's go get a steak.
You can get a steak here, Daddy-O. Don't be a...
Oh, after you, kitty cat.
Initially, I had it like really long. It was like a date in real time, all right? And it was sort of like Sally's job to kind of like, little by little convince me to bring it down and bring it down and bring it down. And it still could be funny. You would still have what I'm talking about, but maybe it wouldn't be so painful.
He did want it to feel very much like a date, and it was very long at first, and we just had to kind of live with it for a while.
Just like, letting me live with it long enough so I could eventually, okay, I've had it enough. I've seen that enough. Okay, maybe now I can lose this part. Okay, so now it was like here and now it's like here.
Finally, we'd bring it down, and then I kind of brought it too far down, and then he said, we got to bring it back out.
That's it. No more. This is not a video.
We do that for 8 months, so intense. I see him more than my husband.
And sometimes I, get annoyed with her for not reading my mind 100%. I mean, all right, it's not good enough that she reads it 80% of the time, all right?
We work very intensely together, and it's kind of amazing that we still like each other. If I was with my husband that long, I don't think I'd like him that much. So